What's going on, Soul Nation? Ginger Prime here, and today we're going to be doing a controller guide for Phantasy Star Online 2. If you guys have not played this game, you can play it with mouse and keyboard and controller. In this case, I'm using an Xbox Elite Series 2 controller, and we're actually going to show you some of my special configurations that I have for this controller as well, but any standard controller is going to work for you and this game. The goal of this guide is to really kind of walk you through everything that you can do with the controller in Phantasy Star Online 2, what I am doing, however, not as a way to say that you're doing it wrong, but as a way to show you what I'm doing and hopefully help give you guys some inspiration. So with that, let's go ahead and fight this guy who's just randomly deciding to come in while I'm trying to make this guide and show you how easy it can be and enjoyable it can be to play with the controller. So the basics are this. If you're going to press your start button, which in this case is kind of the hamburger button right here, this is going to bring up your main menu. Left and right on the D-pad is going to allow you to cycle through and then up and down going through the individual sub items. If you want to jump into your configuration and your options, your B button is going to be your confirm button. This is very standard for a typical JRPG. A in this case is going to act as your cancel and or your jump when in the game. So if I press B, I'm going to go into my option settings, and here I'm going to have my basic settings. And if I go into my camera settings, for example, this is important because I like to play inverted. There are two different kind of control styles. They're called Action 1 and Action 2. If you think of this as your main third person, and then if you're doing any kind of first person style gunning or targeting, and we'll show you that because that's just pressing down on the right stick as a click, and that will actually cycle between Action 1 and Action 2, and we'll show that in action. But just take note, if you play inverted like me, you want to make sure you set it on both of Action 1 and Action 2, otherwise you're going to be a little bit discombobulated. So, under our control settings, you have your display input type. I am using alphabetical because I'm playing with an Xbox controller. If you're playing with PS4, you're going to want to pick key symbols. If you're playing keyboard or mouse, or you want to use numeric symbols, you can change that as well. You can also go through your basic gamepad configuration. We're not going to necessarily do that here, but if you're having problems with your gamepad, I recommend doing that. Pretty much the value here is going to be under assigned keys for your gamepad. Again, you have your Action 1, Action 2, and your window. So think of third person, kind of first person, and finally kind of how you navigate your windows and more. So if you want to change that to where A is confirmed and B is canceled while you're navigating windows, you can easily do that. So here from this tool. So sticking with my Action 1, you can see I've got Action 1, Action 2, and Action 3. I'm using an action type selection of a 3-person or a 3-button type. You can set it to a 2-button type if you want. That will free up a free button for you to map here as well, but I'm going to stick with 3-button types because that is my preferred method. You also are able to set your primary input method, whether you want to do keyboard and mouse or gamepad. I choose gamepad. It's going to again ask you for that input method type and your alphabetical symbols that you want, and there you go. So it's kind of a 3-prong assist. So because I'm using 3 action types, I use X for Action 1, Y for Action 2, and R bumper for Action 3. This is also where my Elite Series 2 comes into play, or even your Elite. If I just drag this over in here, you can see I've got my configuration slot for PSO2, and then for the bumpers, these little paddles, I set these also to RB and LB accordingly. So I'm just going to highlight that for you here, just there. So, okay. So we talk about that, and the reason is because I like to be able to also press back here behind the scenes to be able to. I don't find RB to be the most valuable button. I've kind of played around with a couple things and I haven't found a setting that works. So if I do, I will be sure to update this guide on the channel here. Be sure to subscribe and like and share and all those social media stuff that we're supposed to say. Anyway, beyond that, jump, I have it as A. I actually really like that. If you ever played Final Fantasy XV, they made the jump and the confirm button the same. I've got those separate because that is so much more comfortable. I might end up changing this later. So again, in future videos, stay tuned. I'll also include links in the description and in the cards, so that way you can hopefully easily find it. Now I have changed by default. The switch to rear palette is LT. I switched it to RT. That's just kind of how my brain works. I like RT from an attack perspective and LT from kind of an aiming, in different things perspective. And you can see here I've actually made LT my lock in or lock on button. Change view, I've kept as right stick, and I'll show you how that looks here just in a second. I do not have an auto run set. I do have evade set to LB, and I also have that mapped to the back trigger here. Switch targeting I have not set as well. Now you have open main menu left and right on the D-pad. Quick menu is left on the D-pad, and then when you, like we're showing, switching palettes up and down, and then the sub selection and activating sub palette in this case is L stick. So those are the options that I have set. Action 2 is pretty much standard the same way. It acts just slightly different. You have less options, as you can see here, but I can make sure that RT and LT are working the same way. Otherwise, it will throw you off. And I have made no changes here into the window command of A and B and, selecting multiple and things like that. So feel free to kind of play around with that if you desire. If you make any changes, be sure to hit save and exit. Otherwise, your changes won't save and you might be a little bit confused. So let's go ahead and dive in right now. So we talked about action 1, makes sense. Action 2, right bumper for action 3, or again, back on the palette. In this case, if I hold down right trigger, now I'm going to switch to 3 more actions. This is really where the game excels, because if I press left and right, I can use my sub palette menu here. So I've got it right now set to 7, which will be rest up. Pressing down on the left stick is going to let me use that. Now, because the game works with spells the way it does, actually holding down left stick will allow me to charge that ability up and make it even more powerful. This applies to all my magic. So holding down Y will allow me to cast an even higher level magic spell. So just keep in mind that just because you have just basically 6 sub palette items here for easy quick attack, you have the ability to kind of move some of those items to and fro to actually your main menu here to be able to select via left and right on the D-pad. So holding down up or pressing down will allow you to cycle through many different options here. And so you see I have it pretty much configured all the same way right now. That's just because I'm new on this job that I'm filming on. But just note that you can have up to 6 different palettes of weapons, different weapon types, different actions that are all easily selectable. Ideally, in this case, you wouldn't want to have, like in this case, rest of here and rest of here on X, but it is just what it is for the purpose of this video. So keep in mind that is something you have actually more than just 6. You've got a whole set, a palette of items here that are going to be standard, and these 6 are going to be something that are going to easily change via hitting up and down on the palette controls. Beyond that, we talked about left and right, we talked about up and down, we talked about our main buttons here. Let's go ahead and get into a fight and let me show you basically dodge, which would be left bumper. This is very handy. I put it on the back palettes. So as a part of it, I can hold down the left trigger and that's going to give me this kind of auto lock-in attack. You don't have to necessarily do that. You can easily move and just hold down the main attack button. You can charge up your magic, put out some damage on some enemies, but I feel like holding down left trigger kind of feels more like that of a third person or a kind of a first person shooter, in which that I can sit here and have that and be able to move about freely and attack and target different enemies accordingly, and then releasing it allows me to take that off as well. Also, if I press down on the right stick, this is going to put me into that kind of third person, or excuse me, first person aiming mode. But you can see here it is a little bit, it's more for when you're trying to aim and attack and kind of target things accordingly. Let's say if you're playing as a ranger or a gunner. So keep that in mind. That's where action 1 and action 2 come into play. Now, other things to note when you're playing with the controller. Obviously with a mouse and keyboard, you're going to have different options. Pressing select here is going to bring up your quick menu. You can actually press right trigger and you can turn your quick menu into more than just pretty much what it is. If you want to focus in on communication, you can do that, and now you have communication listed here. So for example, if you're in kind of the main lobby area and you're trying to target other people, you can select nearby characters and you'll see a list of people who are actually nearby you. In Final Fantasy XIV, you have the ability to kind of really target people with the controller out and about. You don't have that so much. You have to actually use a mouse if you want to do that. If you're just playing 100% with a controller, this is going to be your kind of key guide to that. Another thing that you'll notice here, if I back out all the way from my quick menu, if I press start, if I was sitting here and somebody was saying, hey, let's go do this content, it's going to let me know that they're ready up. And so you'd press start and you'd press Y to access kind of a quick menu so that you can tell everybody else that you're ready to roll into the action and into the into the content, which ultimately will be a good, hopefully fun time for you to have. With that, hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully you found something interesting in this guide. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and I can see if I can't help I guess bring it about and make it hopefully a little bit more interesting or informative as I continue to develop out my controller skills when it comes to Phantasy Star Online 2. Phantasy Star Online 2 is going to be launching on Xbox and PC in the West after a long period of time, a long hiatus. So hopefully you are going to be finding this game and being able to play with it in a very good way soon. That's a horrible way of saying it, Brian. It's okay. That's just how we're going to roll it here on Ginger Prime. So we're also going to be doing more guides. So if you guys have any questions, anything that you're struggling with in the game, anything you want to know, let us know in the comments below. Be sure, again, to check out our Discord. Link is in the description and more. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys have an amazing time with this game, and I look forward to talking with you about it here in the near future. But for Work to Game and Ginger Prime and Soul Nation and all the different things, my name is Brian. I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.